Today we're going to take a look at what is underneath your Nissan Sentra, the 2013 to 2017 versions, or also called the B17. So underneath your Nissan Sentra, you can kind of walk through a couple of things that are important to note just to start with. Is this car is front engined and front wheel drive. So right underneath it, where we're standing is just about where the driver's seat would be. On the right hand side here, this is actually your engine, your 4-cylinder, and then on the left hand side, or the driver's side here in the US, it is your continuously variable transmission. So when we look underneath this is the transmission fluid pan, and over here this is going to be the engine oil pan with its drain port right there, and then you've got your engine oil filter. Now if we take a look with the transaxle on the driver's side here, we've got a axle or half shaft that's going to go out to the driver's wheel, and then we've got one that follows all the way out to the passenger side front wheel. Now looking at the front suspension, what you do have is a control arm, which is this piece. You've got your tie rod, which is this piece. That's what controls the steering. You're going to have a sway bar, which kind of goes up and over, and an end link, which connects the sway bar all the way to your strut. So your strut is the shock, and then above it, that coiled piece is the spring, and those go to your hub. And in the hub is going to have your wheel bearing, and then on the outside, of course, you're going to have your brake and brake calipers. Now, on a unibody car like this, try to get where the sun is helpful to us, you actually have something called a subframe, which means the car is kind of all one steel shell, and then the subframe is this black portion that you can see that's actually bolted in a few different spots straight to the chassis. Now, when we take a look up here, you can see this is where your headers are. That's what that kind of cast steel piece coming off of the aluminum block of the engine is. It goes into a catalytic converter, which is that big thing right there, which is going to go down to your downpipe, which goes to your secondary catalytic converter. That's what that large diameter part is. Then you're going to have an exhaust flange, which is going to bring you to your Catback Exhaust. So when you buy a Catback Exhaust, it'll start just after the second catalytic converter, and it'll go through. You've got kind of this mid pipe here, which goes to a resonator, which is what that piece is. The resonator kind of takes out some of the drone that you get on the highway through the piping all the way back to your exhaust muffler. Now, you'll notice there's another junction right here. That's because at this junction, that's what is then going to be called your axle back exhaust. And that's because you've got your axle that spans the back of the car, and because the connection is behind it, that rearward portion of the exhaust is axle back. Now, as we look through, we've gone over the exhaust. Now, let's take a look at what these black lines are that actually come down the back. Now, you're going to have your driver's side brake line, your passenger side brake line. Then you're going to have right here, this is a fuel return line and a fuel line. So when the fuel pump sends fuel to the engine, it's at a constant rate, and when the engine's not using all of it, they need a line to return, a lower pressure line to return back to your gas tank, which is what this big black mass is underneath the car. So that's your gas tank there. You can see it goes all the way from passenger to driver's side, and then you're going to have your fill neck right here, and then these two hoses that you see right there go back to a charcoal canister on the back, and that's for emissions. That's your emissions charcoal canister, or evaporation control valve, I believe is what that's called. And then you're going to see your brake lines come up. This one, of course, is going out to the passenger side, and then this is going to the driver's side. Now, these Nissans use an interesting suspension. You'll see that it actually runs solid, welded together all the way from the passenger to the driver's side here. That's what's called a torsion beam suspension. So it's not fully independent, because if we look at it this way, you can see it's connected by this beam that runs all the way from one side to the other. And what that basically allows is a certain amount of flex between the two wheels to help kind of body control in the back and allow for a little bit more inexpensive suspension. Now with that, you're going to have your trailing arms. Trailing is always going front to back. So it's trailing from the front. There's a bushing, runs to the back hub. You've got your shock that's attached to it, and then your spring, which goes into the spring perch on that torsion beam suspension. So that basically covers all of what we have going on underneath this Nissan Sentra. Get you a good panning shot from front to rear. Well, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Hopefully you learned something about your Nissan Sentra's underside, and subscribe for more.